The sound of keys jingling broke the peaceful silence of the apartment hallway. Jasmine Torres pushed open the front door, her shoulders sagging under the weight of another 12-hour workday. Her laptop bag hit the floor with a heavy thud, followed by her jacket sliding off her arms like dead weight. All she wanted was silence, her couch, and maybe some leftover pizza that wouldn't judge her life choices, but silence was apparently too much to ask for. A mother's enthusiasm. Jasmine, honey, you're finally home. Rosa Torres appeared from the kitchen, practically vibrating with energy. Her eyes sparkled with the kind of excitement that made Jasmine's stomach drop with worry. She knew that look. That look meant her mother had been planning something, and it usually involved Jasmine's social life, or tragic lack thereof. "Hi, Mom," Jasmine managed, kicking off her uncomfortable heels and immediately feeling relief flood through her aching feet. She'd been wearing those torture devices since 7 in the morning, running between meetings and design revisions that her boss, Daniel Pierce, had demanded with his usual cold precision. Rosa wiped her hands on her apron, unable to contain her smile. "You'll never believe what happened today. I ran into Patricia Greene at the farmer's market." "Patricia? Can you imagine? We haven't seen each other since college, and there she was, picking out tomatoes like no time had passed at all." Memories of the past. Jasmine dropped onto the couch, massaging her temples. The name Patricia Greene rang a distant bell. Her mother had mentioned her before, some nostalgic figure from her university days, back when Rosa was young and carefree, before marriage and single motherhood had shaped her into the strong woman she was today. "That's wonderful, Mom," Jasmine said, hoping her enthusiasm sounded genuine. "I'm really happy for you." But Rosa wasn't finished. She settled into the armchair across from Jasmine, leaning forward with that conspiratorial energy that spelled trouble. "We talked for hours, catching up on everything. She told me all about her life, her family. And Jasmine, she has a son. A son about your age, maybe a bit older." There it was. The trap was being set, and Jasmine could see it coming from a mile away. The setup begins. "Mom, please don't, he's very successful," Rosa continued, completely ignoring her daughter's protest. "Patricia says he runs his own business, works incredibly hard. She worries about him, actually. Says he's so focused on work that he never makes time for relationships." Sound familiar? Jasmine shot her mother a look. "If you're comparing me to some workaholic stranger, I'm just saying, you two might have something in common." Rosa's hands fluttered excitedly. "Patricia invited us to dinner this Friday. Just a casual evening, nothing formal. I thought it would be lovely for us to meet her family, and who knows? Maybe you and her son will hit it off." The groan that escaped Jasmine's lips was involuntary. A blind date disguised as a family dinner. This was her nightmare scenario. After spending all week dealing with Daniel Pierce's impossible standards and endless revision requests, the last thing she wanted was to spend her Friday evening making awkward small talk with some stranger who probably collected stamps and talked about tax deductions. Building mental pictures in her mind, Jasmine began constructing an image of Patricia's son. He was probably pale from spending too much time indoors, with bad posture from hunching over spreadsheets. Maybe he wore those awful transition lenses that never quite cleared up properly, and definitely owned multiple pairs of khaki pants. He probably had strong opinions about the best brand of paper clips and got genuinely excited about quarterly reports. "Mom, I really can't," Jasmine tried again, her voice taking on a pleading quality. "Work has been insane. Daniel has us working on this massive project with an impossible deadline, and I need Friday to just decompress." And Jasmine Torres. Rosa's voice took on that tone, the one that meant she was about to play the guilt card. "I haven't seen Patricia in over 20 years. 20 years. Don't you think it would mean the world to me to have my daughter there when I reconnect with my oldest friend?" The guilt card, and there it was. The ace up her mother's sleeve. Jasmine looked at Rosa's face, seeing the hope and genuine excitement there. Her mother had sacrificed so much after Jasmine's father passed away when she was just a teenager. Rosa had worked 2 jobs, put Jasmine through design school, and never once complained about her own lost dreams or abandoned friendships. This wasn't really about setting Jasmine up with some random guy. This was about Rosa reclaiming a piece of her youth, reconnecting with someone who remembered her before life got complicated. How could Jasmine say no to that? Fine, Jasmine sighed, watching her mother's face light up like a Christmas tree. But I'm wearing jeans, and I'm not pretending to be interested in whatever boring hobbies this guy has. Rosa clapped her hands together. You won't regret this, I promise. Patricia is such a wonderful person, and I'm sure her son is lovely. She did mention he's quite handsome, actually. That's what mothers always say, Jasmine muttered, standing up to head to her room. Right before you meet someone who looks like they've never seen sunlight, promises and predictions, just keep an open mind, Rosa called after her. You never know what might happen. Sometimes the best things in life come when we least expect them. Jasmine paused at her bedroom door, turning back to her mother. The only thing I'm expecting is mediocre conversation and maybe some decent food. Please tell me Patricia is a good cook, at least. The best. She's making her famous pot roast. Well, at least there's that, Jasmine conceded, disappearing into her room. As she closed the door behind her, Jasmine leaned against it and closed her eyes. Just one dinner. She could survive one awkward dinner for her mother's sake. How bad could it possibly be, if only she knew that Friday night would turn her entire world upside down in ways she never could have imagined. Friday arrived with the inevitability of a storm cloud. Jasmine had spent the entire week trying not to think about the dinner, throwing herself into work with even more intensity than usual. Daniel Pierce had been particularly demanding, calling back-to-back meetings and sending emails at ungodly hours. By the time Friday afternoon rolled around, she was mentally exhausted and wanted nothing more than to cancel, but one look at her mother's excited face that morning had sealed her fate. Now, standing in front of her mirror, Jasmine adjusted the simple blue dress Rosa had convinced her to wear. It wasn't too fancy, but it was definitely nicer than the jeans she'd threatened to wear. Her mother had already left 20 minutes earlier, too excited to wait, leaving Jasmine to arrive fashionably late, or rather, reluctantly late. Journey to the unknown. The drive to Patricia's house took 30 minutes through Los Angeles traffic. Jasmine's fingers drummed nervously on the steering wheel as she rehearsed polite conversation topics in her head. The weather. Current events. Maybe some safe questions about his business. Nothing too personal, nothing that would encourage false hope from their mothers. Patricia's neighborhood was pleasant, with tree-lined streets and well-maintained houses. Jasmine pulled up to a charming 2-story home with warm lights glowing from the windows. She could already hear laughter from inside, her mother's distinctive giggle mixing with another woman's voice. Just get through this, she whispered to herself, checking her reflection one last time in the rearview mirror. Eat, be polite, go home. The moment of truth. She rang the doorbell, and within seconds, it swung open. A woman in her mid-50s with kind eyes and Rosa's same enthusiastic energy stood before her. You must be Jasmine. Patricia Greene pulled her into an immediate hug. Your mother has told me so much about you. Come in, come in. Rosa and I have been catching up. The stories we've been remembering. Jasmine smiled genuinely. Patricia's warmth was infectious, and she could see why her mother had missed this friendship so much. It's wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Greene. Please, call me Patricia. Daniel should be down any minute. He was just finishing up a work call. Patricia rolled her eyes good-naturedly. That boy and his work. I keep telling him life is more than business meetings and project deadlines. Jasmine's smile froze. Daniel. A work call. Project deadlines. No. It couldn't be. The impossible truth. Daniel, honey. Patricia called up the stairs. Our guests are here. Jasmine heard footsteps descending, and her heart began to pound. She turned slowly toward the staircase, some deep instinct already screaming the truth before her eyes could confirm it, and then she saw him, Daniel Pierce, her boss, her stern, demanding, impossibly perfect boss, stopped dead on the last step. He wore dark jeans and a casual gray sweater that Jasmine had never seen him in. His usually perfectly styled hair was slightly mussed, and his expression transformed from polite greeting to absolute shock in the span of a heartbeat. Their eyes locked. Time seemed to stop. Silent recognition. Jasmine felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. This couldn't be happening. This was a nightmare. A cosmic joke. Some terrible simulation glitch where the universe had decided to torture her specifically. Daniel's mouth opened slightly, then closed. She watched his throat work as he swallowed hard. For once, the man who always had perfect control over every situation looked completely blindsided. "Daniel, this is Rosa's daughter, Jasmine," Patricia was saying, oblivious to the silent horror show unfolding between them. "Isn't she lovely? And Jasmine, this is my son, Daniel." Jasmine started. "Haven't," Daniel began simultaneously. They both stopped. Maintaining the facade. Rosa appeared from the living room, beaming. "Jasmine, there you are. Isn't Patricia's home beautiful? And this must be Daniel." "Patricia, you were right, he is very handsome." Jasmine wanted to die. Right there. Just sink into the floor and cease to exist. Daniel recovered first, years of business negotiations apparently serving him well. He descended the final step and extended his hand to Rosa. "Mrs. Torres, it's a pleasure to meet you." His voice was steady, warm even. Jasmine marveled at how quickly he'd pulled on the mask of normalcy. Then he turned to her. "Jasmine." Her name in his mouth, outside the office, in his mother's home, felt surreal. She forced herself to shake his offered hand. His grip was firm, professional, exactly like in the office, except now she was hyper-aware of the warmth of his skin, the strange intimacy of this contact in a completely different context. "Daniel," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dinner begins. Well, let's not stand around." Patricia ushered them toward the dining room. "Dinner is ready, and I'm starving. Rosa and I have been talking so much we forgot to eat lunch." The dining room was beautifully set, candles flickering on the table. Jasmine found herself seated directly across from Daniel. She could feel his eyes on her, but she couldn't bring herself to look directly at him. Instead, she focused on her napkin, folding and refolding it in her lap. Patricia and Rosa launched into animated conversation, reminiscing about their college days. Stories tumbled out, late-night study sessions, terrible dates, pranks they'd pulled on their roommates. The two women were lost in their own world, occasionally laughing so hard they had to wipe tears from their eyes. A different Daniel. Jasmine picked at her pot roast, which was admittedly delicious, and stole glances at Daniel. He was being attentive to their mothers, refilling Rosa's water glass without being asked, laughing at Patricia's stories. There was a softness to him she'd never seen in the office. He looked human. Approachable. Almost gentle. And then, Patricia was saying, this one decided to dye his hair blonde when he was 12. Used some box dye from the drugstore. "Daniel, show them that photo I have." "Mom, please." "No," Daniel said, but there was amusement in his voice, not the cold dismissal Jasmine would have expected. "He looked like a very confused lemon," Patricia continued mercilessly. "His father almost grounded him for a month." Rosa laughed delightedly. Jasmine went through a phase where she only wore purple. Everything purple. Purple socks, purple backpack, purple hair clips. "We have so many photos where she looks like a little grape." "Mom." Jasmine finally looked up, meeting Daniel's eyes across the table, and there it was, a spark of shared understanding. A silent acknowledgement of their mutual mortification. The corner of his mouth twitched upward, and she felt an answering smile tug at her own lips despite everything. Walls beginning to crack as dinner progressed, Jasmine found herself relaxing incrementally. Daniel asked Rosa about her garden. Apparently Patricia had mentioned Rosa's legendary roses. He listened attentively as Rosa described her pruning techniques, asking follow-up questions that showed he was genuinely interested. This wasn't the Daniel Pierce who critiqued her font choices with surgical precision. This was someone else entirely. Someone who existed outside the glass walls of the office, who had a mother who embarrassed him with childhood stories, who apparently had terrible taste in hair dye as a preteen. Jasmine, Daniel tells me he runs a design agency, Patricia said suddenly, pulling Jasmine from her thoughts. What a coincidence that you're a graphic designer. Daniel's eyes found hers again. There was a question there, how much should they reveal? Yes, Jasmine said carefully. Quite a coincidence. Maybe you two could talk shop, Rosa suggested innocently. Jasmine has been working so hard lately. Her boss sounds like quite the taskmaster. Jasmine nearly choked on her water. Daniel coughed delicately. I'm sure he has his reasons for pushing his team. Good design requires dedication. Or he could learn about work-life balance, Jasmine heard herself say, emboldened by the surreal nature of the situation. Their eyes locked again, and this time, she saw the challenge in his gaze. But there was something else too, interest, maybe even respect. Unexpected revelations. Well, Patricia said, standing up to clear plates, I think we should take coffee in the living room. Rosa, I want to show you the photo albums. I found our old yearbook. As their mothers disappeared into the kitchen, chatting excitedly, Jasmine and Daniel were left alone at the table for the first time. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Miss Torres, he began. Don't, she interrupted quietly. Just, don't. Not here. He nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I had no idea. Neither did I. She finally looked at him fully. Your mother thinks you're a hopeless workaholic with no social life. Funny, he said, and there was that almost smile again. Mine says the same about you. Despite everything, Jasmine felt a laugh bubble up. It was absurd. Completely, utterly absurd. And maybe that was why, for the first time in months of working under Daniel Pierce's exacting standards, she felt something shift between them, not everything. But something. The living room felt smaller than it had any right to be. Jasmine perched on the edge of the sofa, acutely aware of Daniel settling into the armchair to her right. Patricia and Rosa had already spread out 3 photo albums on the coffee table, diving into memories with the enthusiasm of archaeologists discovering lost treasure. Oh, look at this one. Rosa pointed to a faded photograph of 2 young women in overalls, covered in paint. Remember when we decided to redecorate our dorm room at midnight? Patricia laughed, covering her face. The resident advisor almost expelled us. We got paint everywhere, the floor, the windows, even the ceiling somehow. Jasmine watched her mother's face glow with happiness. This was worth it, she reminded herself. Even if she had to sit through the most awkward evening of her life, seeing Rosa this genuinely joyful made it bearable. The human behind the boss, Daniel, grab that album on the top shelf, would you? Patricia gestured toward a bookcase. The blue one. He stood, and Jasmine couldn't help but notice how different he looked in casual clothes. In the office, Daniel Pierce was all sharp suits and sharper criticism. Here, in jeans and a sweater, he looked almost normal. Approachable, even. He retrieved the album and handed it to his mother, then caught Jasmine looking at him. For a moment, neither of them looked away. There was a question in his gray eyes, was this okay? Could they somehow survive this bizarre situation? She gave a tiny shrug. What choice did they have? Childhood stories unfold. Now this, Patricia announced triumphantly, opening the blue album, is Daniel at his first piano recital. He was 8 years old and insisted on wearing that ridiculous bow tie. The photograph showed a small boy with serious eyes, sitting stiffly at a piano, indeed wearing an enormous bow tie that seemed to swallow his neck. Mom, Daniel groaned, but there was affection in his voice. You were so nervous, Patricia continued, her eyes soft with memory. But you played perfectly. You always did. Even back then, you were such a perfectionist. Jasmine studied the photo. Even as a child, Daniel had that same intensity in his gaze. Some things, apparently, never changed. Jasmine was the opposite. Rosa jumped in, flipping through her own album. She hated performing. Remember your school play, honey? You forgot your lines and just stood there frozen until the teacher whispered them to you. Thanks for that memory, Mom, Jasmine muttered, feeling her cheeks heat, but when she glanced at Daniel, he wasn't smirking or judging. Instead, his expression was understanding, even sympathetic. I forgot my valedictorian speech, he said quietly, surprising everyone. Got 3 words in and my mind went completely blank. Stood at that podium for what felt like an eternity before I remembered what I wanted to say. Jasmine blinked. Daniel Pierce, the man who commanded every meeting with absolute confidence, had frozen during his valedictorian speech, finding common ground. Really? She asked before she could stop herself. He nodded, a rueful smile playing at his lips. Really? I thought I was going to pass out. Public speaking terrified me back then. And now? Jasmine found herself genuinely curious. Now I've learned that confidence is just practiced fear, he said, then seemed to realize how personal that was. He cleared his throat. Or something like that. Patricia and Rosa had moved on to another set of photos, but Jasmine remained focused on this unexpected revelation. There was a real person beneath her boss's professional facade. Someone who got nervous, who had embarrassing childhood photos, who had struggled with the same fears she had. Mothers with missions. You two are being awfully quiet over there, Patricia observed with a knowing smile. Getting to know each other? Mom, Daniel warned. But Patricia was undeterred. I'm just saying, you both work so hard. It's nice to see you taking an evening off, Daniel. And Jasmine, your mother tells me you barely have time for yourself either. Work keeps us busy, Jasmine said diplomatically. Too busy, Rosa added pointedly. I can't remember the last time Jasmine went on a date. Mom. This time Jasmine's protest was genuine. This could not be happening. Rosa, you too? Daniel looked at his mother accusingly. Is this why you invited them to dinner? Patricia tried to look innocent and failed completely. I invited my dear old friend to reconnect. If our children happen to meet and find they have things in common, well, that's just a happy coincidence. The mothers exchanged a look that confirmed every suspicion. This had been a setup from the start. No, she admitted quietly. You weren't wrong. Sometimes the person you least expect, the one who drives you crazy and challenges you every day, might be exactly what you need. Not because they're perfect, but because they understand you in ways others can't. Because they see your potential even when you don't. Because beneath the professional distance and office politics, they're just another person trying to navigate life's complexities. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth exploring. As Jasmine drove home that night, she couldn't stop smiling. Monday morning at the office would certainly be interesting. But for the first time in months, she was actually looking forward to it. Honest conversations. After another excruciating hour of barely concealed matchmaking attempts, Patricia stood up. Rosa, help me with dessert? I made that chocolate cake you used to love. The two women disappeared into the kitchen, their laughter echoing behind them. Jasmine and Daniel were left alone again, sitting in the sudden quiet. I'm sorry about this, Daniel said after a moment. My mother has been on my case about my work schedule for months. I didn't realize she'd resort to ambush dinner parties. Join the club, Jasmine replied. Mine has been dropping hints about grandchildren since I turned 25. A genuine laugh escaped him, a sound she'd never heard in the office. It transformed his face completely, making him look younger, less guarded. This is so strange, she admitted. Seeing you here, like this. You're so different. Different how? He seemed genuinely curious. Human, she said bluntly. In the office, you're terrifying, honestly. But here, you're just a guy who got embarrassed by childhood photos and lets his mother boss him around. He considered this for a long moment. I suppose I am different at work. I have to be. But for what it's worth, you're different too. How so? At work, you're always on guard. Defensive, almost. Like you're waiting for criticism. He paused. Which, given that I'm apparently a terrifying boss, makes sense. But tonight, when you were talking with your mother, you were relaxed. You smiled more. Jasmine wasn't sure how to respond to that. It felt too intimate, too observant. Walls crumbling. I'm sorry if I've been too hard on you, Daniel continued, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. At work, I mean. I push my team because I believe in their potential, but I'm realizing that might not always come across the way I intend. Are you apologizing to me? Jasmine couldn't hide her surprise. I suppose I am. He met her eyes directly. You're talented, Jasmine. Very talented. Sometimes I forget that criticism without encouragement can be destructive. She felt something shift in her chest, some of the resentment she'd been carrying around for months loosening its grip. Thank you. That means more than you know. For the record, he added, a hint of humor returning to his voice, I'm also sorry my mother thinks I'm a hopeless case who needs to be set up on blind dates. And I'm sorry mine thinks the same about me. Jasmine found herself smiling. Though technically, this isn't a blind date if we already know each other. No, it's much worse, he agreed. It's a blind date with someone who's seen you at your most stressed, understands all your work complaints, and has probably heard you curse my name at least once. Only once, she teased before she could think better of it. His eyebrows rose. Should I be worried about my coffee being tampered with? I would never, she said primly. That would be unprofessional. I save all my cursing for after hours. They were both laughing when their mothers returned with cake. New understanding. The rest of the evening passed in a strange but pleasant haze. The tension that had characterized the first half of the dinner dissipated, replaced by something easier. Jasmine found herself actually enjoying Daniel's company. They discovered shared interests beyond work, a love for old mystery novels, a mutual hatred of pineapple on pizza, and surprisingly similar taste in music. As the night wound down and Rosa began making noises about leaving, Patricia walked them to the door. This was wonderful, she said, hugging Rosa tightly. We can't let another 20 years pass. Absolutely not, Rosa agreed. And Jasmine, Daniel, wasn't this nice? Getting to know each other? The mothers were about as subtle as a sledgehammer. New beginnings. It was enlightening, Daniel said diplomatically, then turned to Jasmine. Perhaps we could continue this conversation sometime? Maybe over coffee? Just as two people who understand the pressure of demanding careers. Jasmine searched his face for any sign of obligation or politeness, but all she saw was genuine interest. I'd like that, she heard herself say. Good. His smile was warm, real. Though preferably without photo albums and embarrassing childhood stories. I make no promises, she teased. I have 3 whole albums at home. As they walked to their cars, Rosa linked her arm through Jasmine's. So? What did you think? Mom, you're impossible, Jasmine said, but there was no heat in it. But was I wrong? Rosa's eyes twinkled. Jasmine looked back at the house, where Daniel stood in the doorway, watching them leave. He raised his hand in a small wave, and she found herself waving back.